Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Teacher Talk, the podcast for teachers who are lifers but still want to have a life. I'm Jared, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, Johanna. Hey, Johanna.
Hi, Jared.
What are we going to talk about today?
So I am dyslexic.
This is like the title?
I don't know what the title's going to be.
What if, so you say you're dyslexic.
Maybe.
No, but you're actually saying you are.
I am. Tested twice, positive both times.
Well, we might as well dive in, because there's no way to test it, because no one can say what this disease actually does.
They can test it.
No one can describe the symptoms.
Oh my
gosh. No one can say
MRI
how it works.
Man.
The brain glows, I guess.
You're just feeding garbage.
So everyone thinks that dyslexic means that you see like the letters reversed.
I will say this, it's really frustrating when as soon as you tell people that you are dyslexic, they declare that they are also dyslexic, which could technically be true because about 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 people have some form of dyslexia. It's also on a scale.
But I transposed 2 numbers once left to right. Instead of writing 12, I wrote 21. So obviously I'm dyslexic.
I get a lot of stories like that. Like people want to connect and also own the dyslexia title. And it takes a lot of my spirit to go, in 3rd grade, did you not know that your letter sounds? Because unless that was true, but I thought it could be really helpful to teachers to talk to an adult version of the kids that they are trying to help.
Yeah.
I mean, because I was I was really bad. We should maybe go into how, so they know just what type of student they are talking to.
Do you want my theory on dyslexic kids?
Oh, tell me.
People generally. So it's called my Bill Burr theory.
We should probably say, to give Jared a little bit of credit, so he married me, which dyslexia does not go away for now. I guess, have we ever said we were married before?
Sure.
I'm sure they knew. We talked about having kids. And then our daughter is dyslexic. She is a medium to high on the little scale. And then Niall is a medium to low on the little scale of dyslexia.
This the son?
Yes.
Yeah.
You are
so
not.
When I make fun of this fake disease, the audience should understand that I'm joking because I live with my entire family that has this disease I'm calling fake that's actually real.
Yes. And people think it's just connected to reading, but it's really our whole thinking is...
Yeah, another thing that can't be described.
Uh-huh. But just how we interact with the world is sometimes challenging.
And it's related, like that transposing things isn't like totally unrelated to the thing.
It's a sign.
You know how like every kid writes their E's backwards, like Winnie the Pooh, like that's related to it too, right? Is while a non-dyslexic brain is learning these like symbols as sounds in their language part of their brain.
Yes, the Linguistic Centre is learning that a letter equals a sound and creating that connection. Just like a number equals 4 things. A dyslexic is not building that connection for a letter equaling a sound.
Like it
equals a shape. It equals a drawing.
Like you can think through it like I can think through a hieroglyph. You could like teach me that the bird hieroglyph means something, and then I could look at it and think, okay, that represents this, and then I know that means that, but it's not a direct connection between the symbol and the sound like a normal reader.
Right. Nope. The Spatial Center, so that's why they can see dyslexia on MRI scans, is because a dyslexic reader, the Spatial Center is the part trying to read. And the Spatial Center is not designed to read. It's very good at deciphering what it sees and understanding a map and, seeing 2D things as 3D things and vice versa. But it is not so good at connecting like linguistic. It's not connected to linguistics at all. It's not even the same part of the brain as linguistics. So
there's a part of the non-dyslexic brain that like is got like this direct processing capability to turn these symbols into sounds and vice versa. And there's just like, it's not like symbol higher order brain function that represents this sound like I might think when I'm translating something, and then so that's this. It's a direct flight between symbol and sound that just is lacking.
Yes. And then, okay, so not a scientist, but my understanding of the process would be that if you do teach a dyslexic to read correctly using, people like to, in education, throw around the word research proven, but in all honesty, like research proven techniques that connect into the Orton-Gillingham methods, that you can actually, the Spatial Center continues to light up in the dyslexic brain, but you can grow the Linguistic Center. It's a lot easier if you do it while the Linguistic Center is still in active growth, which is before the ages of about 8 and 9. But even then, they're not 100% sure how true all that is.
Back up for a sec, because you said correctly, and by that you mean the clever dyslexic brain is able to compensate through this spatial reasoning to look at like the shape of words and as symbols.
Yes.
Or as pictures kind of that represent things. So
I knew that the shape of a T, the shape of an H, the shape of an E made the word the. It's just that when the words became longer, and so like, let's say we had a word that was like where or which. Well, my brain was really good at getting the first 2 letters, sometimes the 3rd letter. I like to see the actual shape that all the letters make together, but I had to use context clues to help me figure out which of those shapes it is. It's like when you see 2 people that look really similar, and you have to use something else about that person to let you remember what their name is. Like, that's what I did with reading. And it's very effective at making people think you're reading, but you are... At first. Well, because when everything is 3 letters long,
right,
it's so much easier.
But eventually this will become overtasked and you'll fall behind in reading? Yes.
And the smarter... smarter is wrong. The
higher IQ.
The higher IQ, the dyslexic, and depending on the severity of the dyslexia, the easier it is for them to hide it. And it's not that they're hiding it. They think that everyone else's brain is working just like their brain.
No one knows how other people read.
Yeah. Like, I didn't know that people were I knew they were talking about sounding out words. Like, I remember that as a part of Sesame Street. I remember taking a lot of time with Sesame Street attempting to learn how to sound out words. And it just... I can distinctly remember where I was. I can remember the carpet. I can remember the shape of the television console because it was a whole console. And it was like gibberish, like trying to understand this lesson on sounding out letters.
And you think that by teaching correctly, which is a little bit of a bold claim, but again...
We have 2 children who are very successful readers, and yet... completely dyslexic.
But what if they never had dyslexia in the first place and it's all just a con?
Oh my Lord.
They would have learned to read anyway.
I remember. Okay, so Jared's saying this, but to get Jared to understand that Eve was dyslexic was kind of a journey. He thought I was crazy.
Well, because he thought she was going to be when she was 0.
Yes, but
Very few.
I never like to attach anything to the show notes, but what I will attach to the show notes is there are screeners that you can use based on the age of the child. They're like 20 questions, and one question on its own or a couple of questions on its own doesn't mean very much. But if you're checking a lot of the boxes on the screener, then it's time for you to have your kid evaluated. And you do not have to have your kid...
Not professionally, just from her own experience.
Just fine. But you can have them evaluated outside of the school, and depending on your state, depending on your insurance, like... you can get coverage to have your child tested. Our particular state does see dyslexia as a mental disorder. And so it's something that's now medically seen as a medical need. And so therefore there's coverage. But not all states are as progressive as ours. But get some, not your doctor. Don't go to your doctor. You need is it a psychologist? Who did we go to? Psychologist? Yeah. And it should be, you're getting a good screening process. This should occur over multiple days. It should occur over multiple different types of assessment. They should not be relying on one test. They should not be relying on one chunk of time. I mean, it took us, probably 3 months to get our kids tested.
Well, they got to get paid too.
What?
They got to get paid too. The psychologists. Hey, but
Jared, see, people are going to think you're serious.
I kind of am. The gist of the idea is they do an IQ test and a reading test, and there's many different flavors of them, but that's the basic idea. And if your IQ is higher than your reading, that's a really strong sign that there's something wrong with your reading.
But they also tested math abilities. Yeah. They tested logical reasoning. They test
there's
whether
a whole bunch of other...
there's an attention issue that's causing the inability. They test behavioral. Is the child not learning? They got to rule out a lot of things to narrow down.
Yeah, it's medical science.
Yes.
I'm not dismissing it totally, but that's the gist of the idea.
Anyway, I knew our daughter was clicking. Well, one, I knew that statistically, because I was dyslexic, she probably had about a 50-50 shot. And then two, from very young, she was clicking some of those boxes, Jared.
I remember when I became convinced.
A lot of those boxes. When did you become convinced?
We were doing kindergarten or first grade reading stuff. And she knew all her sight words, all her TH words, like this, that, there, them. And we'd be reading a little, see them go. They are going. Every time it was she could see the TH or the WH. It was just guessing her list of memorized TH or WH words. Even if the very line before had the same exact word. I'm and I would point at the one and I'd point at another one. I said, we just read this one. It was there. And this is identical to that. Why would you guess anything but the same thing you just read? But it was she couldn't see past the TH. It was invisible.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is pretty classic then, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
So this gets into the teacher component because you did get frustrated and then she started to misbehave. Our daughter, who never does anything wrong, could control her behavior. And so rather than read, she preferred to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I preferred to get frustrated.
Yes.
Over her not paying attention.
Yes, you did think it was her not paying attention because her behaviors suggested that she was not paying attention.
Yes.
Yes. So let's give some helpful, rather than just going on this deep end, why don't we dive into how...
So we talked a lot about our experiences, which is, we'll just contextualize all we're talking about here is... We're not your doctor.
We're not your doctor.
We're not your boss.
We're not your boss.
We're not your whatever person you get told what to do by.
Yep, absolutely. We're not any of those people. So
that's kind of why we wanted to talk about our experience for a while there, and that was maybe more than we meant to. But I think it's interesting. But contextualized for everything we talk about here is. This is sort of advice from our experience. If you don't care about it, don't listen to it.
Well, this is... Okay, so I was a third grader who did not know her letter sounds at all. I did not know them at all. I could fake read really well, but when they tried to make me, show whether I knew how to read. They discovered I couldn't read at all. I was a runner, which means that I routinely left school weekly.
Back when that was cool.
What?
Back when that was cool.
Was it
nowadays,
cool?
you'd have, I don't know, they'd shut down a city.
They didn't know, I think, that I left all the time, or they didn't care. Or, I mean, I think they cared. I just, I was a behavior problem. So I am your child who, by child, I mean, like, if you have a student when you think they are a behavior problem, they have anger management issues, they cannot read, they refuse to do the work, this is your chance to talk to that child all grown up. But I became pretty, I'm going to say I'm a win. I'm a societal win. like how do you get that,
I wouldn't
that win?
Go crazy. I said you didn't fail.
I didn't. They thought their goal was, I mean,
you're not in prison or Skid Row.
And my dad, how they got them to go to a meeting together. But anyway, they were told in a meeting that in first grade, like, we will try and get her to pass high school. Like, that is our goal, that she will pass high school. And so isn't
that kind of everyone's goal for
grade
school?
They didn't
that is kind of the goal.
I know, but they didn't think I could do it. I mean, they thought I was real bad. I mean, so I am that child, and we're gonna dive into how you can help connect, relate, and just give you a little bit of context.
All right, so are we done talking about ourselves?
Yes.
All right, what do the teachers need to know?
The teachers need to know that what the student can control is their behavior. And they would rather feel in control and be horrible than feel out of control and feel dumb.
Right.
That is an intense need.
That's probably true for a lot of things, including dyslexia.
Probably.
But okay.
But I can distinctly remember how willing I was to set fire to the fire trucks if it meant that I was not put in a position where it learned I just couldn't learn to read.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what do teachers do about that?
This is going to sound horrible because I hate when people tell me it's the solution. But one is to have a relationship with the child where they can be vulnerable.
All right.
2, act like they are very smart, even if you question whether that is true.
Okay.
So
that probably never hurts.
What didn't help me was when people lowered the standard. And as a teacher, I face this a lot. People want to lower the standard for a student because the standard is too high. And that is probably true. The standard for that child in that moment is too high. But if that's all a student ever experiences, then they're never going to be able to achieve anything more. And so, like, I needed to work harder than everyone else. I had to. I had to spend more time on everything than everyone else. That truth could not be changed. And a teacher telling me that that was my truth was actually liberating. Like I remember her telling me over and over again, it's not that you can't do it, it's that you need to do it in 3 times the amount of time.
That's avoiding the soft bigotry of low expectations, as one of our top 3 presidents named George said once.
Telling the truth, like just saying things like, you would rather leave this school right now than do this work because this work is hard and you're worried that you can't do it. But you and I are a team, and this is hard, but as a team, we can do it. Like that constant exposure to, you and I are a team, and we are going to do this together, and we are going to have to work hard. And then breaking the learning into very, very small chunks so that we can celebrate successes like learning letter sounds, or learning that a 4 represents 4 things. You know, like, it doesn't mean that the expectation should change. It just means that the celebrations need to be more consistent. But how does a teacher do that when they have a ton of kids?
They don't.
You have to ask for help.
Have to ask for help.
Yep. Help, 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 help. The chances are that the child's parents live the life the child is currently experiencing, right? I mean, there's huge hereditary connections. Not always, but from what I've read, there tends to be a follow through. And if it wasn't the parent, it was maybe a sibling, but that parent does want to help to the best of their ability, but they don't have any idea how to help. And so reaching out to the parent with very specific goals about what you want them to do with the student or what they should help the student do is successful as long as the goal is small enough.
Parents' specific goals.
Yes. Like, if those parents have health insurance, ask the parent to call the health insurance company and find out if testing is covered. Or don't do that, because that could get you in a lot of trouble. But, like, on the other hand, I feel like I don't
know. Can you?
Why would I get you in trouble? I don't know. I get nervous about giving...
For our non-American listeners, that's a thing that can happen, is you just don't have health insurance.
If the school suggests that you, like, need a screener, then it's, like, all this... I don't know. It's really scary. You don't want to be perceived as
the school is telling me I need this thing.
Yeah. I don't know, direct them to this podcast. Like, information is so helpful. Like, from a parent's perspective, the information that we got through that process is what allowed us to help our children. It's what connected us to resources. It's what, like, there's Decoding Dyslexia that is an amazing resource that on a local level will tell you tons about tutors available in your area or support groups, or I mean, there's just tons and tons of information available. But if a parent doesn't know to go find it, you know, I feel like everyone knows that there's all sorts of help for students who are on the spectrum with autism, but I don't think people realize that there's just as much help for everything else too. It's just the press is not as intense, maybe.
Sure.
So, okay. And like,
too many resources for autistic kids, not enough for what?
Send your emails to.
Yes. All right.
Okay.
What else do I need to do?
There are resources available at your school level. However, the more intelligent, the higher IQ, the dyslexic, the more likely it is that no one will see it as a problem and they will just see the student as, because the student will just present as not very smart.
Average or below average, you're just like an ordinary kid.
Only really intense dyslexic needs pop up. And there are a lot of them, and they will pop up. But a whole bunch of kids are not being identified early enough. And so when they are identified, it's like the brain doesn't want to learn what it needs to learn to allow the student to really read correctly. Like, I have tried to learn to read correctly, and my brain just won't do it. It doesn't.
Because if the kid is of average intelligence and also has dyslexia, they'll fall so far behind that it'll be hard to ignore.
No, I don't think so.
Or below average.
It depends how intense the dyslexia is.
Sure. Okay.
Sure.
Once again, no symptoms or describable characteristics.
There are tons of symptoms and describable characteristics.
Whatever. Say they have
in the show notes
62.5% dyslexia.
Okay.
And they're of average or below average intelligence. They're going to fall behind almost certainly and will be hard to ignore as needing intervention.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
If they're bright and have 62.5% dyslexia,
Yes.
they'll just fall back to average and maybe become a behavior problem out of their frustration, but be easy to not see that they need intervention.
Yeah, they just need to focus a little bit
because
more.
it just looks like they have a bad attitude and they're doing fine overall.
Yes. Well, and dyslexia and ADHD tend to be connected.
Sure. Let's open another worm can.
Okay.
Not enough night crawlers. Let's get some red worms.
Okay.
Too.
So let's get back to what teachers can do. So 1, reaching out to the parents. 2, reaching out to within their school and getting kids resources. 3, what if your school seems like there's just not enough adults to manage all the needs? Because
yeah, what if that happened?
I have heard of a lot of
Right to the podcast if you've ever heard of a school that didn't have
stop it
enough adult resources to manage all of their needs. We'll go do a live podcast from that one school if we can find it.
I have heard of a lot of success coming from using the retired community within the area.
How does that work?
So basically, the school pays for someone who is trained in Orton Gillingham methods, and they use either a church community that's close to the school, or they've used like the community often has like a retirement group that meets at a community center, and they reach out to the adults at that community center, and they do a couple of hours of training about how to help a dyslexic. And then those adults, it's a parasitical relationship, right? The kid needs an adult to work.
Not parasite.
What do I want to call? Symbiotic.
There you go.
It's a symbiotic relationship. Older adults are needing someone to give them purpose, and the students are needing someone to give them attention. And so that's actually worked really well.
It's a harsh way to put it, but I take your point.
Or they're willing to help. I mean, it's for...
Yeah, older folks just sitting around to be like, oh, give me purpose.
To put it in perspective.
But,
so you and I do tutoring.
People want to do good things, and they have time, and this is something they could identify as a way to do something worthwhile.
But having them listen to the kids read books is not what is helpful for a dyslexic learner. That is not helpful.
Not just reading.
So then the next thing would be that you need, if your district is not using methods or resources that are connected to the Orton Gillingham approach.
This is like the third time you said that. What is that?
Okay, it's just a way of learning to read where you're focused on phonics.
I already know how to read.
But not just phonics. Because the Spatial Center is the one that's learning to read, you can't present a situation where dyslexic learners can just memorize what the words look like in the shape. And so constantly exposing them to visuals actually can harm you.
Orton Gillingham?
I've never looked specifically into that program, but I'm sure it's connected into the system. But it should be...
Do you remember those commercials?
Yes,
Hooked on Phonics worked for me.
Well, because when we were kids growing up, it was particularly bad for dyslexics because it was all focused on like sight memorization, which is fine if what instantly happens is your linguistic center like sees letters, sees sounds, and sees the connection on its own. But if you're dyslexic, your brain needs taught to see a letter and see a sound, and then it needs to do like nonsense word reading. So it's practicing those skills, and it needs to like, a lot of the books now like are not good for dyslexics because it will have like the word spider in it. Oh my goodness. If a kid is trying to learn that one letter equals one sound, you can't have it be like in the house. I mean, house is a complex set of skills to figure out what those letters all mean to make that sound.
Because it's German, I think.
So then they'll go like, but there's a picture of the house, so the kid can just look at the picture and see it's a house. That is like the worst thing
H word
to do for dyslexics. It makes the dyslexics stronger in their inability to read. So anyway, Orton Gillingham, get your school on board. There's tons of programs that connect to those systems. The dyslexia.org has a lot of programs that they have evaluated for the effectiveness. There's a lot of research on different programs and what is working and what isn't based on the age of the student. But our children received 2 hours a week of one-on-one instruction where we were told not to read with them outside of those 2 hours. They were not allowed to independently read or practice, and they are extremely successful high readers for their age. So it's not as much time as people think. If you do the right instruction, it's not the time commitment people think.
We spent quite a bit of money on that, though.
We did, but you don't have to.
You don't have to?
You can
we
train.
Didn't have to?
Well, we could have trained an army
I would
of
have had to
retired
work
people.
harder. And I'm not going to do that.
Locally, there are schools where they have trained. People who are not reading specialists can learn these methods and work with kids, and it can be extremely successful.
And not only are you helping, if you're not lazy like me, you can help your dyslexic kid and do a really good thing for your community to get that ball rolling.
But I wouldn't try to do this as a teacher. I mean, get the research and get the information to the people, the administration at your school. Get help. Do not try and do this alone. I mean, theoretically, if you have a class of 170, because you see a bunch of different kids every day, or you are in a classroom where you see 25, I mean, theoretically, you are dealing with 25 to 5 kids who probably need these resources. And in a whole school setting, like, just get the word out there, and there's a way to make this better.
All right, this has been kind of scattershot.
It has been. I didn't mean for
I'm
it
sure
to be
we'll
like
talk
this
about it again.
all. We will. Oh, I wanted this to be so helpful. I'm not sure it was helpful.
I think it'll be interesting, and I think there's helpful stuff in there, and then I bet you'll get letters, and we'll talk about it again.
We probably will get. You should just send us the questions, because I don't know. I'm too connected to it.
But you described your own experience and the kids' experience. Maybe that'll help people get an idea of what they might be looking for. And then to recap, you want to, for you and the student, you want to, and all of these are good advice generally, I think. I don't know. Remember, I would just stand at the podium and lecture. Allow the student to be vulnerable with you. Tell them the truth. Act like you're on the same team as them. Don't lower the standards, and celebrate successes, but break down the successes in reading so that they're achievable. That's how you make it easier, is you don't lower the standard, but maybe you make the threshold for celebrating success easier or quicker.
I mean, look, I teach online classes where writing and reading is almost 100% of what I do. And I am not, like, my computer makes it possible for me to do everything, because if I don't want to, I don't have to type it. I can talk it in and then edit it, which is a lot easier for dyslexics to do. I can have my computer read to me at all sorts of different speeds. I can, like if you don't need to teach reading, then don't teach it through reading. Dyslexics tend to be extremely good listeners. They tend to be really good hands-on learners.
By which you mean, if you're trying to teach science and stuff, this is the classic problem with the smart dyslexic kid, is when you're a normal, bright kid, you learn how to read, and then all the information is right there. You go and read it, and now you become both smart and knowledgeable.
You read to learn.
But by being knowledgeable, then everyone sees, oh, look how much that kid knows. And smart people, once they discover reading, almost invariably use it to unlock a whole bunch of knowledge.
Yes.
But a smart dyslexic person doesn't have that option, and so they will be smart but ignorant.
Yes.
Like my favorite example, the comedian Bill Burr, who I'm not sure if he knows he is, but I'm convinced is dyslexic because he's really smart with his arguments and thinking, but is just the most uninformed person I've ever heard talk. And the two things going on at the same time is weird. It's like, why didn't you learn anything ever? Plus, then that really plays into the stereotype of that smart aleck behaving poorly comedian guy. Like, he became a class clown, I'm sure.
Oh, yes. Yeah, because that's how he filled his bucket.
Because he was smart, he was clever, he was witty.
Yep.
But he was ignorant because he didn't learn the way that we expect most people to learn, which is to just read about stuff. But by saying, unless you're teaching reading, don't teach it by reading, you mean like if you're trying to learn about biology or something for dyslexic students, there's other ways to learn it besides reading out of a textbook.
Yep. And you don't have, like, I put that on me. Like, I go to the YouTube all the time and watch videos, and from the video where there's tons of images and maybe someone else would get overwhelmed, I can learn the names of the parts of the different muscles while like talking. Like, I love watching those like surgeries where they talk, this is this and that. Like, my brain learns it well that way. And I'm sure you would prefer to just have the muscles described to you.
You kind of have to see them.
Yeah, I suppose. But it's just be willing to allow other options.
Yes.
Okay.
And then ask for help. You don't want to tell parents that you've diagnosed their kid with dyslexia.
No.
And that they need to get intervention that will go poorly.
Yes.
But if you talk to them and say, "Hey, I've noticed things. Maybe this is something you yourself would want to look into."
Yes. Something just, I'm wondering if there's more to it. I like to use that phrase a lot. I'm just wondering if there's more to this than meets the eye.
Like the behavior, because they'll want to believe there's something more to the behavior. Right?
All of it. I mean, like, people want to believe that their kids are smart and successful and amazing because they already think that themselves. And so for a school to tell them differently is...
There may be resources at the school. There should be. There's the Orton-Gillingham method, and if the certain communities have had retired folks learn that method so that they can help tutor dyslexic students in a way that works symbiotically.
Yep.
That's an idea of a way for kids to get help. Oh, what else you got? What do we need to recap besides that?
Oh, the truth telling is very important.
Just the truth. Tell the truth.
Yeah, the whole, like, you are going to have to work harder. This isn't fair.
Yes.
You are smart. Your brain is different. There's great books. Oh my gosh. My daughter and I listened to, what was the book called? There's great books on dyslexia because there are huge advantages to having a dyslexic brain that the dyslexic doesn't realize. And so that can be very empowering. To own it as not a negative, but a positive is very empowering, depending on the age. Like, if you're dealing with a high school kid, I would absolutely 100% connect them into books that can describe all of the positives.
Maybe you even put that in the show notes.
I will put that. I am excited to put stuff in the show notes.
There's like Dyslexic Advantage or
Dyslexic Advantage is the one that my daughter and I listen to.
Or Superpower or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because that's in a subtitle, I think. Something about superpower.
But there are huge advantages. There is one disadvantage, which is language is hard.
Yeah, one. It's a pretty big one. But
and organization is hard. And remembering things in some sort of logical, sequential order is hard.
Hey, more nondescript symptoms. You know what, though? It's not going to matter soon because no one's going to have to read in 20 years. It'll just all be augmented reality computer stuff telling us everything, right?
I have no idea.
Well, until that day, try and help your dyslexic students like we talked about.
Thank you, Jared.
Or don't, because we're not telling you what to do. But this is what Johanna wishes had been done more for her, let's say, from her personal experience.
I don't know how I made it.
Yeah. So if you wanted to make kid Johanna happy, this is what you do. As a professional person, you do you, but this is our advice for how to theoretically make someone like kid Johanna better off. That's our angle.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you, Johanna. Johanna, do you get questions from listeners ever?
Yes, we do.
How do those listeners send you questions?
They send us an email.
Where does that email go?
teachertalk4teachers@gmail.com.
But wait, what kind of 4? How do I do 4?
All of the 4s. They can do a number 4. They can write the word FOR, or they can do FOUR, even though that one doesn't quite make sense.
Well, perfect. teachertalk4teachers@gmail.com.
Yes.
Thank you, Johanna.
Thank you, Jared.
Teacher Talk, the podcast for teachers who are lifers but still want to have a life.